How you guys doing? My name is Dr. Priapism, and this is my quick guide to patch 2.4 Channeling Wizard, the new patch that's currently being tested on the PTR. A lot of items were released focused on channeling, and I kind of just put this in together with collaboration of some of the other players. And I feel that these are the best pieces and skills to put together for just general Firebird set. There are other builds with like Arcane Torrent or other abilities like Black Hole and Hydra, but this is basically like the baseline. This is where you want to start at. This build itself can easily do Greater Rift 70 solo, and it can go anywhere up to Greater Rift 90 or even 100 if you have your gear optimized the right way, and you can get that like really lucky, insane, awesome rift. So jumping into it, we're going to use the 6-piece Firebirds, which in 2.4 is revamped with a new 6-piece set bonus, which basically gives us 100% damage for each enemy that is ignited with our 4-piece, and for each elite we get 1500% damage. This is really what puts Wizard from the bottom of the list to the top of the list. I think for where Wizard is at, this is amazing and pretty much good to go. Another set we use is the Endless Walk. This got also revamped in patch 2.4. While moving, damage taken is reduced by up to 50%, and while standing still, damage is dealt by up to 100%. The other pieces focused on channeling is our Mantle of Channeling, which basically is a universal piece for all classes. You deal 20 to 25% increased damage, and you take 25% reduced damage while channeling, as well as your weapon, which is a new wizard. It's not wizard only, but it's the legendary affix is for wizards. While channeling any of your wizard spells, all damage is increased by 75% to 100%. Going over the other pieces, we use Ancient Parthan Defenders for our Frost Nova and Meteors for damage reduction. Witching Hour, which can be changed out for String of Ears for melee damage reduction, or Hergbrash's Binding, which I'll go over later. We're using Convention of Elements, which can be changed out for Unity if you have survival issues. And last but not least, we're using Firebirds Source. Now, some people use, instead of Firebirds Source, they use the Firebird Shoulders, and then they equip the new sigil, Etch Sigil, and basically gives them a little bit more room to play with. But I would recommend using the Firebird Source for the 20% fire damage. That way you get 20% on your source, 20% on your bracers, and then you don't have to hunt for that like amazing neck that has the dream rolls on it, right? So you can, this build is very dynamic. You can do that, like you can use Etch Sigil and wear Firebird Shoulders, and it's not going to hurt your build too much. But I just believe that Firebird Source is probably the best available compared to the two. Now in the cube, we're using Etch Sigil, which basically makes while channeling, while we channel, our other arcane spenders, Meteor, are automatically cast every second, and it's also cast for free since an item is proccing it. In the armor slot, we're using Hergbrash's Binding, which this is probably one of the last pieces I need to update, but this is basically our resource cost reduction, which makes Disintegrate able to channel completely for free. So definitely worthwhile. If anything, you can actually drop Hergbrash's Binding, go and equip it, and then you can cube Aquila, which was also revamped in 2.4. So while you're above 75% resource, all damage is taken reduced by 50%, just like Unity, except you don't take the damage that your follower does. So this is definitely really nice, and probably one of the only switches that is on par, if not better, so definitely something I would recommend. And last but not least, Halo of Arlies. This is a staple ring in the build. It's required to use. You can either equip it or cube it and use conventional elements, or equip Halo and cube convention. I wouldn't recommend Unity as much as I would recommend cubing the Aquila, but it's definitely an option if you want to, but convention does give a lot of damage. So, going over legendary gems, we're using Bane of the Trapped, which is a staple in any build, as well as Bane of the Stricken. Our third gem is the only one that's optional and changeable. Taeguk, very balanced gem, gives you damage and armor. If you need the extra elemental damage reduction, you can use Esoteric. But two other gems I haven't tested are Moratorium and Mutilation Guard, and they're probably the two runner-up to the build. There's nothing really else that really works with the build. So these 6 gems are basically your selection, to put it short. But other than that, I would recommend using Taeguk, and in the higher greater rifts, switching out Taeguk for Esoteric. So going over Paragon priorities, since I have a Compass Rose that still has 12% movement speed on it, and I have 12% on my boots, which we don't need to stack disintegrate damage, so having 12% on our boots is completely fine. I only have 1% movement speed. That gives me my 25%. And something very key that you need to know is max arcane power. You have to have 50 points in this. This is a flat 500% increase to meteor damage from these 50 points right here. The rest of it, just dump it into intelligence. As far as offense, you want to prioritize your crit damage, crit chance, attack speed, and cooldown reduction. This build requires 0 CDR and 0 resource cost reduction. So, pretty straightforward. Defense, straightforward as well. Resistance, armor, life regen. I value armor over life as a wizard because we're very low on our armor. So, really nothing else to say there. As far as utility, resource cost reduction, and as much as we don't need it, it's the best available. There is rumor that area damage was fixed in this patch. I've yet to test it. I'll update the guide. If it is, and this will definitely be the first priority. So, as far as an unconfirmed point of view, it would be resource cost reduction, life on hit, area damage, gold fine. If area damage is fixed, it would be area damage, resource cost. It would be 1, 2, 3. It's the same as it is. Area, resource, life on hit, gold fine. So moving on to the skills, we use Disintegrate over Arcane Torrent, because Arcane Torrent's damage is not applied instantaneously. It actually has like a 1 to 1.5 second deliverance time, to where I'll show you it real quick. See how like the flame shoots up in the air? Disintegrate's damage is delivered instantaneously. A little bit of PTR lag, lovely. But yeah, see, it goes up instantly. And you can also switch directions and cleave ignite a lot easier with Disintegrate. Now Arcane Torrent does slightly more damage, but I would stick with Disintegrate. Frost Nova and Ice Armor, these both work hand in hand. With using Ice Armor and Crystallized, we get 20% armor, stacking up to 3 times every time we get hit by melee. And every time we get hit by melee, our ring, Halo of Arlies, casts Frost Nova with Bone Chill. With having Frost Nova on our bars, if we didn't have Frost Nova on our bars and Halo of Arlies casted Frost Nova, we would not benefit from the rune. That's the only reason why we have Frost Nova on our bars. Now, also, Halo of Arlies does not proc the cooldown. So if your ring procs Frost Nova, you can still use the ability on your bars whenever you want. So if you're stuck in a tight spot or you want to walk past something, you could just boom, hit Frost Nova and move on. Meteor, now I'm going to go over this very quickly. Meteor showers damage just is way too inconsistent in a higher greater rift. You'll be moving too much to actually benefit from the constant spamming meteors. So like the only meteor, the couple that do hit are only going to hit for like 200%, 270%, and you're just going to be moving too much. Now, if you get in a group build, it might be nice to use this, but I would still stick with Star Pact, and I'll explain why. We can't use Molten Impact because even though Etch Sigil cast our other spenders for free, it does take into account that this rune gives us a 15-second cooldown, and we just can't deal with that. So Star Pact, basically what it says is it spends all remaining arcane power, and each point that it does spend gives you 20% extra weapon damage to Meteor. So if we have a max arcane power of 158, 20% times 158, well, not technically, but 20% for every point we have comes out to about 3,000% weapon damage. Exactly, it would be 3,160%, but I'm not going on technicalities. Since Disintegrate is being casted completely for free and we're not spending any other arcane power, your meteor will always hit for 3,000% weapon damage. I'm not going to be able to show it, but with Star Pact and the current build I'm at, Star Pact is hitting for about 150 million every time it hits, whereas the next best thing would be No Rune, only hits for about 40 million. Going over passives, they're pretty straightforward. Astral Presence gives you 20 arcane power, which is just a flat 400% increase to Meteor. Unstable Anomaly, it's a staple in any build to have an anti-death in the higher greater rifts, on top of our Firebird revive, which is also very nice. Audacity, a flat 30% increase, since we're going to be in melee range anyway, will also benefit from Bane of the Trapped and Ancient Parthan Defenders. And Illusionist. Illusionist is basically your only passive you can really change out, and if anything I would change it out for Unwavering Will for group play. But, you know, since you'll be taking more than 15% life, proccing your ring and Illusionist, teleport will be off cooldown when you need it, and every time you use teleport you'll have 30% movement speed. That about covers our quick guide here. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, I'll have a link in the build guide for the in-depth one. That video is about 30 to 35 minutes, but it does cover a lot more than I'm covering in this build. This is just the forefront video for my build guide on Diablo fans. If you like this build, give me a +1. I'm going to try and stream this build a lot on PTR, and just kind of finalize everything and just, you know, refine it to perfection build, just like, you know, Static Monk or you know, the other monks like Yuli's or Barb builds, or, you know, make Wizard a top tier class again. So that's about it. If you have any questions, drop a comment.